right, Jake has put both fingers in his ears, so or fingers in both ears, even that make more sense. Um, which is the signal for us to get into our smooth start. The 20th edition of a Podful of Saints for the season. That equals our number of league games. These 20 editions, have we had more than 2 wins, do you think? Good editions, because that puts us above City in the table, if that's the case. Anyway, yes, choking there is Jake. Afternoon, Jake.
Hello, Dave. This start is about as smooth as last night's display, isn't it? Hello, everyone.
It's going very well, isn't it, so far, Lee?
Well, speaking of choking, fellas, we've got a very big game to reflect back on. So should we get started with that?
Yeah, it was a big game. Ian Culverhouse, manager. Paul Bastock, assistant manager. Always good to see Baz, of course. Only their second game. We mentioned before when they took over, they've got a really tough baptism. Those first 4 games. So it's easy to get disillusioned after yesterday, particularly last, 30 minutes. And Ian talked about it in his interview about how the players react after going behind, and it did felt as just going to keep slipping away from us once we went 1 down. So we've got to keep it in context. They're taking over at a bad time, very difficult time with this run of games, but we've got to look for some positives if we can get out of this little hole that we are in. And for an hour last night, after the first 10 minutes when Wood really did start on fire, we played well. We came into the game. We had a very clear chance. Ken Charles, in the end, he decided to back pass it to Nathan Ashmore. And we had a nice scramble there, which looked like it was going to go in. But we just couldn't find that killer instinct, could we? And once Wood got that goal, the whole evening changed, didn't it?
It did, and I think the disappointing thing was how it changed so dramatically for us. You know, our heads dropped almost immediately, and within the space of 10 minutes, the game was pretty much over. Yeah, I think the first 10 minutes, I thought the writing was on the wall pretty early. I mean, they basically parked up in our box and were just putting cross after cross. And I thought we dealt with it okay. I thought Long King and Claridge at the back, despite the fact that Claridge only was introduced to the players a couple of hours beforehand, I thought he did okay. I thought partnership-wise they were big and they were strong. But then we grew into it. We managed to get time on the ball. We managed to play out wide. We managed to sort of get a foothold on and sort of push them back a little bit. And we had a couple of good chances, Dave, in the first half in particular. You spoke there of Ken Charles's chance. Given the fact that the goals he scored recently, Aveley, well taken goals, and obviously he got the equaliser as well against Maidstone. You would have thought he'd have put that away. A friend of mine, Reese Wynn, he was a fan of the pod. He turned around to me and said maybe he's more of like a instinctive striker, getting. But again, even so, you should be putting those away as a striker. Because we're not going to get too many of those chances going forward. It turns out he was absolutely spot on. I thought we were good value going in at half time, Dave, but you just knew we can't be squandering too many of those chances, mate. And in the second half, you took about strikers, top quality strikers taking their chances. That's what happened, mate. And I think we gave them a little bit too much respect. I don't know whether I could bring Jake in on this, mate. I mean, I was looking at it, second half in particular. I thought we were a bit slower to get the ball forward. I know it's difficult because I know that Culverhouse wants to play a more direct style, right? And that doesn't really lend itself to the game with Jeffers and or Childs. So maybe there's a change in personnel to be had up there over the course of the next few weeks, maybe. But I just felt as though we got it wrong in the second half. It just didn't seem to click. We didn't seem to move the ball as quickly as we did in the first half.
Yeah. Oh, so cheers, Dave. I think, I do agree. Second half, first half, we were right, I thought. Apart from that 10 minutes, decent. But the second half, we didn't click. And I say, look, it was almost the polar opposite to Maidstone game, I thought. First half there, we struggled. The players didn't really seem to understand the plan there. Second half was much better. Whereas Boreham Wood, first half, we seemed to know the plan, know what we need to do and our roles. And then second half, it just seemed to just slowly ebb away, didn't it? And I don't know if a lot of that was fitness. Boreham Wood a full-time side. you look at their squad, it's not, well, it's pretty much a National League squad, isn't it, really, with what they've invested there again this season. So, yeah, it's tricky, and that second half wasn't great. And I think Culverhouse and Basil will be coming away with that very clear now on the issues with the squad and what needs to happen in the next month or so.
I think you're right what you said there, Jake, about a full-time issue. I think a few people picked up that next to Tim Petty, and he said it during the game. He said, I'm just worried we're going to run out of energy. We put so much into it in that first 45, first hour, and whereas Wood are full-time. And I thought actually looked a very decent side. They did hold that ball really nicely. And yeah, it's difficult to see them now falling out of the playoff places where they are. But as for us, we did fall away. And I think you're right. You've got to keep it in context of their fitness to our levels. They're going to be at a higher level. And as you say, a lot of those players are National League players anyway. So it was always going to be a tall order. Maybe it came just a bit too early for us in the reign of in Culverhouse, and a few weeks' time, a few months' time even. Maybe we would have been better equipped. So because of that, I'm not going to get too down about it. It doesn't look good 3-0. It's what, 8 in 9 they've beaten us. In fact, the one they beat us, you probably saw my notes this morning, was when they put the youth team out in the Hart Senior Cup against us, and we only won it then with a late goal. So really, they've had it's totally under their thumb for a long time now. And it was nice to go toe to toe with them for an hour, but you did just feel if they got the lead, it was going to be tough. So you felt Ken had to stick that chance away. Finn got one when he came on, Finn Wilkinson in injury time, but it didn't really matter then. And again, Ashmore saved. So, yeah, look at our personnel. You talk there, leader, about up front, possibly changing up there because of the style we play. And I've got to say, Sean Jeffers has one of the quietest games he's ever had in front of goal, particularly in the first half. He did nice things further back. But we just couldn't get them, even when we were level with them, we just couldn't get them under pressure enough to really see what they were like. They just looked very composed for the whole team, I thought.
Yeah, they did. And I thought we looked like a team that is low on confidence at the minute, as Culverhouse talks in his interview. And I think that talk about the lowering confidence in the forward areas is quite interesting, actually. And again, I think suggests that we will, like Lee said, see some personnel changes possibly in the next couple of weeks in terms of new faces coming in. I think there's a lot of work to do there. And thought again last night, I thought there was a lack of leaders, maybe, again, especially second half. Once we went that goal behind, there was no one out there going, right, let's sort ourselves out, let's calm down, let's just retain the ball for a couple of minutes. We just panicked. Everyone seems to lose their minds. And again, in the post-match, it's amazing, these post-matches, they're getting quite a bit of information from them, thanks to Ian. He talks about how the players just sort of went into their own shells, didn't they? And sort of self-preservation. And you saw that, didn't you? And I think it is something that now on reflection has been very clear this season that a lot of these players can't or are struggling to manage with these high intensity or high pressure situations when things go wrong. And that's got to be a total mindset change, I think, in the next few weeks. Otherwise, we're going to continue to really struggle.
Well, that's a good point, Jake, because what we've got now is a losing mentality. Although we can keep saying, oh, we've got 26 games to go, we've got plenty of time. Yeah, you have in theory, because you're only 6 points away from safety. But like us, those clubs there are going to pick up points along the way. So it's going to take a while to close that gap. And you've got to somehow shake that losing mentality. It's not easy. And a lack of leaders, well, Michael Johnson became our 6th captain of the season last year in only 26 games. And you're right, I couldn't see a proper leader on the pitch at all. Could you see one, Lee?
Not really, boys. And you talk about the fragility of our mindset as well. The thing is, we did come back at Maidstone, so yeah, we can do it. It is there. It is in our makeup. But I think last night was probably a game where it gave Ian Culverhouse and Paul Bastock a real clear indication of the challenges ahead and what they need to address. I mean, Dave, you're searching for pluses going forward, mate. I mean, that's probably one of them. It highlights where we need strengthening. Yes, we held them out for like an hour, and we were competitive for that first hour. But we need a bit of spine throughout the team for when things are going against us. We need someone to sit there and somehow turn it all around. And it's going to happen over the course of time. We looked at it yesterday, and to be honest with you, I didn't think we'd get anything out of the Maidstone game. So to show the character in which we did to get back was great. Maybe we were going into the Boreham Wood game under false pretenses. Maybe, I don't know. But look, the path ahead is going to be rocky. We knew that anyway, simply because of what has gone since August. It wasn't going to change overnight. The personnel is still fundamentally the same. You've got a very inexperienced centre-back, in so much that he only met the players, his teammates, hours before the game. So hopefully he'll get to settle in and forge that partnership with Long King, who I thought, along with Mitchell in the first half, looked good, solid. And we're going to need more of that going forward into the games ahead.
Yeah, I thought we defended very well up until that first goal. The mentality of the side, it's strange. You look at the character, you try and work it out. Last night we went behind, that game was gone, it just kept going. As you say, Maidstone, we came back. We're not a bad side, not as good as Wood, but we came back really strongly in that one until they put us under pressure late on. Then you go to Averley, right down the bottom, three times ahead against them, and totally fell apart in the second half. So in 3 games, which one's the real St Albans City? And that's what Ian Culverhouse got to work out. He's got to do it with new faces. He's got to change it. That side is not strong enough as it is. There's no two ways about it. That squad isn't. The substitutions, sorry, they did nothing for us. They were never likely to, because the game was going by then. So once he got past his starting 11, it wasn't a lot to really boost our chances after that. So you wonder, what's he going to do with that? Most of those players are on contracts. It's going to be difficult. Are there budget restraints? Will they loosen it a bit to allow Culverhouse to bring some players in? It's going to have to. Otherwise, we could be facing a bit of a problem come next March, April and May.
Yes, but I think that the owners would be astute enough to realise that you've got to give, if you're going to bring a new manager in, along with some coaches and stuff, you have to give them a little bit of grace in terms of providing what they need to get us out of this. I can't believe for any second that the owners are say, no, this is what you've got, this is the hand that you've been dealt, just crack on. It's going to be difficult, fellas, but these good players, there's no point just bringing in players for the sake of it. You know, you've got to identify, but good players, they cost money and they take effort to try and get in. You speak about the situation we find ourselves in, Dave, you know, the fact that Enfield won as well, you know, and they go above us. It's just that thing where to put the boot in on an already bad day, you know, we're now playing catch up even more. 6 points or 7 points out of the safety zone, you know, until we get to that point. So something needs to change, but it's not going to happen overnight. I think there's going to be a few more pitfalls before there's a little bit more in terms of trajectory up the division. But until that point comes, boys, we've just got to stay focused, stay with the team. Big game on Saturday against another playoff contender. Doesn't get any easier, boys.
Yeah, you mentioned changes. The first change we've seen under the new manager, of course, was James Claridge coming in, who you mentioned earlier. 20-year-old on loan for a month from Watford. Before that is with Nottingham Forest since he was a little bapper. His first 3 touches, just wild hoofs. You think, oh my God, what have we got here?
I could do that.
Exactly. We all said we could do that. We were doing it in the Sunday League years ago. But after that, he really calmed down. He played very nicely, I thought, and quite impressed with him. Question his position maybe for a couple of goals, but their crossing for the goals, they were just superb. We don't come across quality like that every week, and if we had that sort of quality, Sean would still be knocking in 40 goals a season. They were superb when they went forward like that, Wood, and it was very difficult for us to defend against. There's no two ways about it. And Kwesi Appiah's hat-trick, it was class. All 3 finishes, class. The header, reading the ball coming over, Claridge as it was, and getting there and head in front of James, nodding it in. The second one from a tight angle, fantastic run by, I'm never going to be able to pronounce his name, so we just call him Femi. Brilliant ball across the face of a goal. Excellent finish at the back post. And the third one, again, Femi. A shorter pass this time. And what a beautiful curling finish. So calm. That's the difference when you're on a good run. That's what, 4 straight wins in the league for Wood now. Barely letting in a goal. The joint lowest number of goals conceded in the National League South this season. But they just ooze confidence when they got their noses in front. And whereas our forwards, as we saw, were snatching at them.
One thing I would say is the fact that the amount of space that the Boreham Wood players were being allowed. I think the first goal, he had time to look at measured crossing, great delivery. I'm not taking anything away. The third strike as well. I mean, it was just, we saw it all the way from behind our goal. I mean, fantastic strike. But the amount of space that they were getting, you can see they were just turning that screw, and they can sense that our players were low on confidence. And ultimately, we paid the price. But how many strikers like that are we going to come up against over the course of the season now? So we're not going to sort of face that quality of striker every single game. We've just got to make sure that when we get our chances, our strikers are doing the business at our end as well.
Jake, well, you both were behind the goal in amongst, 365 City supporters. Excellent turnout in a crowd of 1,306, the highest for a league match between the two clubs. Well, I'd imagine it would be beaten when we get them down the park later in the season. What did you really hope for when you went there, or hope for as opposed to expect?
I was hoping just for a point. I'd have taken that, to be honest. I didn't expect much really at all. I don't think a lot of Saints fans travelling really expected much from the ones that we spoke to. And it sort of played out like we expected in the end. So, you know, it was more hope than expectation. And I think, again, like Lee said earlier, we need to be realistic. The management team have a hell of a job to do in the next few weeks, at least. It's an awful run they've been given to start with. Unfortunately, the position we're in is not their fault. It's the months prior to them coming in, and now they've got to try and save us. But when you've got 13 points after, 20 games, it's always a bit of a worry, isn't it? So, yeah. On the fans, I thought really, really good support again from the Saints fans. Travelled well. I mean, to be honest, personally, I thought there was more than 365 there. Made really good noise, packed out that away end, gave the lads all the support that they could, even when it was pretty dreary towards the end. So well done to everyone that travelled, and we will need that support going on and on over the next rest of the season, really, if we are to get out of the problems that we are currently in.
Yeah, I mentioned the bench earlier. It was Romeo Akinola, Alfie Payne, James Sweet, Finlay Wilkinson, and Iffy Allen. There are some good players in there. Don't get me wrong, but I just felt putting on in the last, from 82nd minute to 87th, Sweet, Wilkinson, Allen. I didn't know what Ian was going to learn from watching them at that stage of the game. Game had gone late in the day. I thought you might as well stick with what you got and just learn from them. But also the other thing I was going to say, no Chinadu. I don't know if his loan's up. You might know, Jake, and no Ben Smith in the squad.
No, we haven't heard anything, have we? We presumed Chinadu's loan was up, but no news. I think on the substitutions, I actually thought that Romeo Akinola coming on didn't work. And again, I don't know what we really learned from that, because it changed the shape, and the shape just fell apart, to be honest, in the forward areas. And also, I'm quite surprised that James Sweet and Alfie Payne didn't come on earlier, actually. I thought Jack James and Matt Lynch were both struggling for a lot of that second half, and maybe could have done with replacing a bit earlier, even if we're already 2-3 down, just to get them some minutes, because we're going to need players like that. And, in the next couple of weeks, even on Saturday, it's a quick turnaround to a fairly decent away trip on Saturday. It's going to be difficult. We need the squad.
One thing I will say about the substitution, sorry, Taz, is the fact I think a lot of it is to do with preservation, because the fact of the matter is we didn't want another situation like Aveley, where suddenly it's gone from 3-0, suddenly we're losing 4, 5, 6-0. That's so counterproductive to everyone involved. I don't know whether the legs were going in the middle of the park there, Dave. So that's maybe why you put on some new sort of players. I don't know, but you would assume, given the absolute debacle at Aveley before, the last thing we need to be doing is getting humped 4, 5, 6-0 by Wood. So we'll take the 3-0, we'll lick our wounds, and then we'll go again for Saturday.
Very true. Do we do a round of applause for Matt Lynch? I haven't bothered to check it because I don't think there's any need to. First player to be booked in 5 consecutive appearances. That's
I
a
like
consistent. Well, it's a consistency even Michael Johnson can't get close to.
Very good.
Yeah, good.
Right, we're talking about Claridge coming in. Of course, he had to come in because Joe Partington left. Anybody see that coming? All right, he's been caught out a few times this season, but some people saw him coming in as possibly involved in the coaching setup and everything. But of course, it hasn't happened. Off he's gone to Worthing, probably to a nursing home down there, I guess.
Hello, Joe. I will say it is the manner of it. What 7-day approach, wasn't it? So when that comes in, of course, it's going to. And when it's a club further up the table in Worthing, it's always going to turn, isn't it? But personally, as a fan, really disappointing actually to see him go. He was club captain. He was trying to lead us. It's clear that he hasn't done much leadership this season. Otherwise, we wouldn't be probably in as much trouble as we are at the minute. You want your leader staying around and sticking with a team in this position because he's helped us get us into this mess, to be honest, if we're frank. And he needs to step up. And unfortunately, he's taken the option of going to Worthing. That's fair enough. He's gone now. We'll move on. And I think it will give Culverhouse and Bazza the opportunity and maybe some budget to bring in one or two faces that they want. I think the lad that's coming on loan is at least a temporary addition for now. But for me personally, it was really disappointing to see him go sort of at that just drop of a hat. Maybe I'm being harsh.
Yeah,
can I just say, this is the family-friendly version of the rant that you've seen. It got a bit. Jacob has got some Christmas spice in him this week, and that was certainly not the type of language and articulation that he expressed over the last week or so about Partington's departure. One thing I would say, Taz, on this, when he come in, he was exactly the sort of player that we needed.
Yeah.
He had his limitations, certainly, but I thought he was a very good addition. He read the game beautifully. He spoke well. He spoke on the pitch. You could see from the off, that was the sort of player, almost a captain in waiting, if you will. I think this season, he's struggled in terms of injuries. And when he has played, I think he's been a pace or two off, which hasn't helped our cause at all. And he has been found wanting at times. That said, I do share Jake's frustration. The first sign of a way out, he's jumped at it. 7-day approaches happen all the time, probably a bit more than people realise.
Yeah.
And there's ways out of it, but he's gone. The first chance of not having... Look, if he hasn't got the stomach for a relegation fight, then fine. But then he was the one who was sort of coming away to the fans and telling us to stick by the team and, have faith in the process and all this sort of jazz. But yet he's the first one out of the door when things get a little bit rough. Now, look, I'm not saying that he would have fit in the system or he would have improved the team in any way over the course of the next sort of few weeks when we needed him the most. But what I would say is that you look to players, more experienced players like your Joe Partingtons, to really step up and be counted. Because ultimately, as Jake said, I wouldn't go as far as what Jake said, that he helped us get into this position, but we certainly need him to help us get out of it. So I think for him to go, yeah, okay, Ian expressed in his post-match that he's a bit closer to his work or whatever. I mean, yeah, okay, fine. But also, I'm pretty sure there's a pound note or two extra flowing his way by going to Worthing as well. So, but no doubt, I remind him of that on Saturday because that's going to be a nice little reunion, nice and quick for us to enjoy. Tabs, I don't know where he sits with you, mate, in terms of fault or the quality of players at our disposal, but he's left us in the shit a little bit, and quite frankly, if he doesn't fancy it, then don't want him here.
I don't know. I'm not going to join in the slagging off of Joe, as it happens. A lot of people felt he was getting very much towards the end of his career because I'm sure he admitted it himself. He's not the quickest player anymore, and he did get called out, but he could read the game extremely well. He'd got a habit of passing straight to oppositions, which didn't do us a lot of favours. But he talked about his good talk and whatnot. Actually, I would love to sit down and talk to him. I limited conversation with him. He sounds a fascinating person, a good talker about football, and I would love to just sit there. Maybe one day we get him on here. I think you two have just blown that. Thanks very much. But I think he'd be a good person to speak to. And he wasn't in the side every game this season. What? We played 25 before he left. He's only in 16 of those games. So he wasn't an ever-present. It did look like his time may have been coming to an end. There were reasons, injuries and whatnot. But with a new management, they might have thought, get somebody a bit younger in there or whatever. We don't know if they'd had a conversation with him or not. From what Ian says in the interview, not would be the case. But we don't know 100%. And actually, I wish Joe all the best. And it's funny because he does work in St Albans, doesn't he, at Sketchers? He never did get you those shoes, I don't think, Lee. So two people did wonder if he would join the Allinsons over at Hemel now. That didn't happen. He lives in South London, so he's taking a train ride down there to Worthing. Probably a bit easier to get to.
I'm wondering if he gave you some shoes or boots, Dave, with this defence.
Yeah, he's got a bit of Partington love in touch. What's going on, buddy?
I'm joking. I will say Joe was a good servant for us, but when you're a fan of a club in the mire that we are right now, it is going to be disappointing when your captain goes in whatever circumstances it is. And unfortunately, it's in these circumstances. If it was to a club in another division, it probably would be a bit different, a bit more understanding. But it's no coincidence that David Noble departed, who we know Joe Partington got along well with, and then sort of less than 2 weeks later, Joe Partington goes, well, and that's the way it is.
The other way of saying it, Jake, you said he's part of the reason we're in this mess. Well, perhaps he's one of the ones then we've got to get out to cure it and bring in fresh blood. There's two sides to that, isn't there?
That's a great point, Tabs, because the thing is, as well, you highlighted there just how little he has played, and he's been in and out of the side for a position of such key going forward. You cannot have someone who's just fleeting in and out. We've got to have stability, and for that reason alone, from a footballing aspect and viewpoint, probably best if he does move on and get someone in who we can build the team around, certainly defensively, because that is going to be the key thing for us driving forward.
The importance of David Long King is now really highlighted. He's experienced, he knows this level. You would have thought he'd be the one driving to be captain now, but we don't see him as captain, I don't think. But he's really has got to take charge of that defence now.
One thing I'll say about the appointment of captains, Jimmy Gray was having a really good conversation when he was manager here, and he gave the captaincy to James Comley, and the obvious appointment at that time would have been, I think it was him or Lee Chappell, and he said to me, I think this is very similar to the MJ thing as well. If you give the captaincy to someone who's maybe not quite expecting it, or and it will just bring that level up. He said if he gives it to Comley, he knows Comley's going to thrive under that, and really sort of drive it and up his game, which I think hopefully we'll see that with MJ. People like Chappell, David Long King in this instance, doesn't need that accolade to make him a leader. I think what will happen now, how much of a leader could David Long King have been with Partington next to him, barking the orders? I think what you hopefully will see now is David Long King really come into himself as a leader, players lead by example, and his application on the pitch. To be honest with you, the armband will only define you so much. It's the performance of you on the pitch is going to define you as a player within this setup. And Ian knows this, Bazza knows this as well. So hopefully David Long King, he's vital, absolutely pivotal for us now. Chinadu, we don't know where he's gone. Claridge, short-term answer, Dave. And you're going to hark back to, the investment of loan players, especially in these key positions, mate. So it's going to be transitional period. So we're going to need our established players on contracts to lead us forward.
Yeah, because Long King actually turns 30 in January. So you could either say he's not a spring chicken or he's got a wealth of experience, whichever way you want to look at it. Michael Johnson, you don't see him as a long-term captain. I never do with goalkeepers. We've had them in the past. Sometimes they work, but I always think a central midfielder, maybe that's the old-fashioned way, always used to work well. But we shall see. New management team just come in. They haven't really had time to sort that out. Right, I've got some comments on last night. I don't know if you two have got anything.
No, go ahead.
Not clean ones anyway.
Well, Tim Petty, he said, very odd evening yesterday. Everything about a visit to Wood is different. We used to detest them, really detest them. Before your time, Jake, way before your time. They were always a smaller club, big, aggressive upstarts and whatnot. But of course, they've ruled the roost for the last, 13, 14 years now. And we've been left behind. And Tim goes on to say, I dare say enjoyable. Everyone seems pleasant. Even the tannoy announcer seemed genuine in his comments. Getting thrashed isn't any different, though. That's just the one thing that hasn't changed. So that was Tim's take on it. And at the game yesterday, I took someone who applied for the England manager's job early in the year when Gareth Southgate went. But he was one of 3,500 people apparently who applied. That's Ian Hall, as you've probably guessed already.
Christ.
Yeah, but he actually came up with something sensible. I know it's unusual.
Stop it. Well, it's Christmas, so go on, finish.
He said he's missed a lot of the catastrophes, Averley, Galston and whatnot. He was there for Baseford, the Nottingham club, so he had an interest there. But he said, after last night, I'm really quite worried. Albeit Wood were quite clinical in the second half. That's an understatement. It felt a bit like men versus boys. You could understand him thinking that to a degree, but I think what we picked up earlier, the fitness had a lot to do with that. And Wood players, they've got a lot more experience at a higher level than ours.
Fitness, yes. Established core of the team, yes. A manager who knows what he wants against a team which is low on confidence, low on quality, dare I say, and also a new managerial structure coming in. You've got an inexperienced centre partnership as well, centre-back partnership. It was always going to be tough. Going on to Tim Petty's response, Boreham Wood, there's nothing nice about going to Boreham Wood. I mean, Jake and I, we walking back down Boreham Wood High Street is like one big escape room, isn't it? It's just, I mean, it's just carnage, really. The locals are shouting all sorts. I'm pretty sure there was some of the abusive comments had some consonants in there as well. Be even better to when they put their teeth in so we can actually hear them enunciate. But apart from that, yeah, I share Tim's. I'm sure the tannoy announcer was very nice. Tabs, was he playing the sort of music that you like, my friend? I know we're on to tannoy gate at every away ground now.
The last two games, Maidstone away, Boreham Wood away, no music before the game. You can just sit there and talk to the person next to you, and you're taking the hub of the crowd, because that crowd was building with our support and whatnot, and it's a proper atmosphere. All that gets drowned out with that monstrosity we get at Clarence Park. Johnny Seabrook was silenced last night, which is, Johnny, you don't know how much we enjoyed it. He was sitting down 2 seats from us, Johnny. Because that's one thing about Wood they have got wrong. They're too aggressive towards opposition media. They wouldn't allow Radio Vera and whatever they call it nowadays to do their recording. They restricted us to one photographer, pitch side. We didn't make any difference with cameras nowadays. You can sit in a stand and do it. And they were restricted. They do that to all clubs, and they had segregation. Well, you're in National League South now, so stop that. We won't do it because it will stop too many people going off to buy Chicken George and God knows what. But so those are the downsides of Wood. But the ground, we call it their ground. It's a great ground now. It's no two ways about it. A bit different when we suffered our Amateur Cup defeat in '71. Yeah, I agree with Tim's comments on the actual day. Apart from the result, going there is not such a horrible experience anymore.
Well. Johnny, don't listen to Dave. We of course missed your commentary last night.
We love you, Johnny. We love you, mate.
We do.
God, I did an interview with him the other week. I don't think I'll get another one soon. Anyway, yes, that's a tannoy. In fact, I just think the match day experience there and at Maidstone is so much better than what you get down the park at the moment. Right, anything more to say about last night, or can we move on?
Let's move on.
Let's move on.
We're moving on down to Joe Partington again. Worthing Saturday. It's funny. This thing about lack of goals in the first half. I mentioned it in my notes this morning, which you two will have obviously gone through every line thoroughly. And yet we're going down there. The last two games down there, the first half have produced 11 goals. So do we see that again? And if we do, are we going to share them or just going to watch them go in?
I'm hoping we're going to share them. I think will be interesting, won't it? I mean, I don't think we've got the players to try and shut up shop against Worthing, to be honest. I don't think we've got the squad to do that in a minute. It's going to be hard, but I think we've got players going forward that could unlock that defence, especially if Joe Partington is playing. We know how to target, don't we? The squad know how to do it. But I think Ken Charles, especially running in behind and the players around him, I think there will be opportunities there. My concern is just at the other end. If we go one behind, two behind, heads will drop potentially, and it will be a struggle. I mean, the last few games against Worthing have basically been basketball matches, haven't they? And it's very hard to actually decipher any sort of tactical information from those games. But it's so hard. We've got to go there positively. I think Bazza and Culverhouse will try and set us up a little bit more defensively, maybe. But I wouldn't be shocked if we try and spring some counter attacks potentially. But I think there's just a lot of question marks. I think central midfield is an area that will be a bit of a concern on Saturday, depending on how we line up.
Lee, with the substitutions last night, you mentioned protecting the players a bit, which is understandable. But also, he did take off both Jeffers and Charles. Was he making some sort of statement there? Or can we read anything into that to possible changes for Saturday? I wouldn't have thought so. He's not got much to play with unless anybody comes in up front.
He hasn't. And it's difficult, isn't it? Because you look at, I would definitely bring Sweet in for Saturday. I liked him. But then what else do you do? Payne, I mean, he owes us a performance or 8 this season, doesn't he? But then you want to try and stick with your likes of Rizzulos and Bantons to try and get you out of this. It's frustrating. I'm not entirely sure that the players who were brought on last night are going to produce anything different to what was served up in the first half. I mean, Jeffers and Charles up front on their own, playing a more direct style. I mean, look, we can see that they work together. Aveley first half being a prime example, but there've been flashes as well early on in the season. It's just that ball's got to stick up there, fellas. I don't know which. Probably you're looking to Jeffers, aren't you, to hold it all up properly? I don't know. I mean, if we keep playing the way we did and nothing's happening, we've got to either change the formation, change the tactics, or indeed just change the personnel. But that doesn't help us going into Saturday. I don't mind playing a more direct route, but we've got to be pragmatic with it. The ball's got to stick up, and then we've got to bring the other key players around into the game. So I don't know is the answer. Wilkinson, does he offer? I mean, he started well in his first game with us, but again, he's petered off. And I don't know whether he's I don't know whether he's the answer, shall we say. But again, Jeffers, as you say, he's just not cutting it at the minute. And that's no fault of his necessarily. It's just the style of play that we've adopted since the new management team have come in. So where do we go from here, fellas? I'm asking you.
Jake, you said about trying to read too much into Worthing. You can't. At the weekend, they went out of the FA Trophy at home to Gosport Borough, only on penalties, but reading the reports, they themselves admit they're lucky to get that far. But then you look at the 2 previous league games, beat Salisbury away, or a bit of a downer, one of the sides we've got to be looking to make ground up on, losing at home to them just shows how crucial that result is now. And before that, 3-0 against Western-super-Mare, who are right up at the top at the moment, wavered a bit the last few games. Then before that, they had a dodgy run, defeated Farnborough, home draw with Chelmsford. You can't read anything. Who's managing that down there now? Chris Agatha, isn't it? I think he's going to play the same way Adam Hinshaw did, playing it from the back. And that's sometimes been their downfall, isn't it, as we've seen in our recent games against them.
Definitely. And I think we will try and set traps to try and catch them out there with that. And I think especially with Ben Charles potentially trying to pounce on any areas at the back, I think that's something that could work. I mean, we've seen Sean Jeffers there. He's scored a couple of decent goals down there in recent years. Again, we know he can do that on 3G pitch. We also know that sort of style of pitch does suit us. I think it did at Maidstone, and I think it potentially will again on Saturday. And we talked about Joe Partington about 400 times on this podcast. Interestingly, their manager said they've signed him potentially as a centre half and also a central midfielder, which is certainly
What?
Yeah,
What?
put him in there. Central
What's he been
midfield,
watching
Joe.
then? Bloody hell.
well, yeah,
Mr.
no,
Tricky.
genuinely, because they're losing that. Dave, do you remember Kane Wills, their central midfielder, small ball bloke, well, not small ball bloke. He's going off in January to another country, and they've signed Partington as a likely replacement for him as sort of a central midfielder. So, be interesting.
Who knew? We had
least-
like the non-league Zidane. I'll tell you what, if he scores on Saturday, Taz is going to lose his mind.
Well,
I mean, it's going to be no, obviously not, because he's Joe's biggest fan.
I mean, if Joe scores on Saturday, you might do an Adebayor, run up the other end and say hello to us.
Oh well, it might take him half an hour to get up there, but once he's there, he's laughing.
Right, we are setting ourselves up for a Joe Partington hat-trick at this point.
Come and say hello to us, Joe. We'll be waiting for you, mate.
Please don't do it, Joe. So we know it's going to be difficult, and I think Baz and Culverhouse will try and catch Worthing out in that sort of ball-playing way. I wouldn't be shocked if on Saturday, at least first half, we don't see loads of the ball potentially, but we'll see.
Look at Taz's face.
We drew at home with them, didn't we, at the start of the season? So you think, okay, they're on a par with us. When you look at the table now, they're 20 points above us. Mind you, most of the clubs are. So everything you think is against us at the moment. So from these 4 games, the first 4 games for Ian Culverhouse, if we end up with 4 points, 1 win and a draw, I think we would take that from where we are, and then we'd sort out the rest of the games against supposedly slightly easier opposition. Hemel Hempstead, you don't get any easier than that, do you? In Enfield, Clark is another 3 points. So if we can get 4 points, win one of these last 2 games against these top sides, Truro at home being the other one, it's a very tall order, but that would be a decent return. That'd be a very good return.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. We're in agreement there. Right, that's that done.
We're still shocked at your optimism, Dave.
Yeah, it won't last. Right, okay, let's do some predicting then for Saturday.
Oh, Christ.
Well, if Joe's centre midfield, I'll go for a 3-1 win for us. If he's not, sorry, Joe. Let's go for another high score, shall we? 3-2 defeat. I don't know where we're going to get 2 goals from, but there you go.
I'm also going to go 2 goals for us. 2-2 draw.
That's what you went for the last 2 games as well, Jake. And 3 of the last 4 you've done that. Yeah.
Oh, no.
The needle is stuck.
The eternal optimist within me says we're going to get a hard-fought draw, but I can't see, unless we get Charles on Partington early, make him play under pressure. I don't know. I mean, but you think about it, right?
Yeah.
He's strong, he's tall, but he's not quick. If you want someone just sort of like niggling him around him, just trying to steal the ball, putting him under pressure, Joe has been a good player, but he's got a mistake or 2 in him. Let's not muck around now. I mean, that's fact. I mean, I'm going to go for a 2-1 defeat, but I hope I'm wrong. And I can see us getting something. We've just got to be brave and we've got to be strong. So let's see.
Of course, they're not going to play him after all this.
No, they won't. No, he'll be on the bench.
Yes, definitely. And the only thing we're likely to get Lee is a stick of rock. Right, so that's that out of the way. No more predictions next week. No games. It was nearly a game on the park last Saturday. The under-23s were playing. It's little more than a beer match. Fortunately, the weather got it called off, and it is absolutely wrong of the club to be arranging those sort of games in midwinter. It's been wet for weeks, and we're going to play this pointless match. We might sell a few more pints of beer and some food. The damage they could have done, because the women were due to be at home as well, weren't they, last weekend? But the weather put pay to that. Sometimes some of the decisions made just drive you up the wall. Anyway, there you go.
Move on.
I was going to go to that. Right, I think we're done, aren't we?
Aren't we just?
Let's think so.
Yes.
Don't know, Dave, you briefly want to mention any former City managers that have been on the move?
It's a good job you're awake, Jake, isn't it? Certainly is. Yes, we mentioned Hemel Hempstead earlier. Bobby Wilson got sacked. Don't know why. Only 9 games unbeaten. Why don't they let it go to 20? Make us all happy. And in comes from Hendon, Lee Allenson as manager. His first time at this level. That's going to be interesting. Ian's gone with him. His dad's gone with him. We know him rather well. I do actually wish you well, Ian and Lee. Just unfortunate club you've gone to. Ian's going to be head of football, and they brought in Chris Winton as coach, which is a very good appointment. He's recently left Slough Town, of course, another former City boy. Your opinion of you two on that move?
I wish it happened after Boxing Day.
I share your goodwill messages towards Alice and family and Chris, because they are all fantastic people and they're football men, which is great. And you don't begrudge them progressing their careers, shall we say. I mean, I'm not entirely sure how much more Ian's career needs progressing. I think from the supporters' point of view, it's definitely a job too far for Ian. I think it's going to be quite galling, knowing Ian and the work he's done at City. To see him in the Hemel dugout would just be, I mean, it's wrong on so many levels. However, I think that you only wish the best for them as people after Boxing Day. I don't know. It's tough, isn't it? Because Lee has always been really ambitious and he likes to sort of take over a blank canvas. He tried to do it at Biggleswade and Hendon and now at Hemel. So you can see he wants to build something from the ground up. And in Chris Winton, he's got a fantastic coach there as well. Ian probably isn't going to be as hands-on as you would think. He's going to be in the stands trying to negotiate their chairman and trying to get a bit more sort of cash out of him. But look, it's... I don't know, Tad. It's really hard for me because I know them all really, really, really well. And I've spoke to Ian and Lee at great length and depth when they were part of the club, of course. It's just Hemel. I mean, it's like, I don't know, it's like your ex-girlfriend going out with like your next door neighbour. You know what I mean? It's just really, really weird. But look, let's see how it all pans out. Let's see.
Go on, Jake. Your thoughts?
Wish him the best. I think this has been on the tables for a while, hasn't it? We heard it rumoured at the end of last season. So it's felt inevitable. The Ian Allinson revenge tour begins.
As he signs Partington for one game on Boxing Day. And then he comes back.
I mean, I'm sure there'll be one or two City players that have already had a bit of interest, no doubt, from Hemel. So we know they've been in trouble. We saw this coming. We know that Boggins will back them. And as I said earlier, wish it would come after Boxing Day. It's going to add another level to that already interesting day over in the HP postcode. So see how it goes and we'll preview it a bit more nearer the time, won't we? But as you said, on a personal level, brilliant people. I'm sure they'll do a good job there off the pitch. I hope not on the pitch. But we'll see you very soon.
It's funny, actually. Last Friday morning, I was out with John Mitchell and Peter Lawrence, two former City managers, of course, and a great 3 hours we had. My Andy was with us as well. And a message came through that I think it was Lee had quit Hendon. And that came through before we found out about Bobby Wilkinson. And rightly or wrongly, I sent Ian a message. I said, "You arrived at Vauxhall Road yet?" I shouldn't have done it. I know I shouldn't have done it. But he didn't reply. But everybody, as you say, it was hinted at and everybody knew it was coming and it did. And I do wish him well there. Right, what other stat to finish on from Tuesday? Well, actually, first of all, Lynch's 5 bookings. He will be available Saturday, of course. He will miss the Truro game, so he can start his Christmas celebrations a bit early. Kwesi Appiah's hat-trick's only a second in the 72 games, I think it is, between the two clubs. We haven't got one. The other one was Jeff Batten in a 3-3 draw at Clarence Park in 74. First league game between the two players. Jeff Batten, I hate to say it, he's one of my favourite Wood players of all time. He came with us and he did so, then went back to Wood. There you go.
We won't mention that you forgot to mention that Ian Culverhouse has actually played for St Albans City last week.
Yes, that was good, wasn't it? Thanks, Fred. Fred emailed to remind me of that. He played 4 games for us in 2000 under John Kendall. It's spread over 4 months. He was youth team coach at Barnet at the time, and I've written about it in the past, but totally forgot about it this time. So good job you were on the case, Fred. Rest of us are losing it.
The St Albans City club historian, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Dave Tavener. Brilliant. Good darts, Tavs.
Can't get
Lapsed.
the staff.
Lapsed.
Well, on that positive, cheery note, thank you all for the views and comments and listens. Everyone that came up to us after the game last night and said, when you're recording the podcast, can't wait for it. Thanks for that. We had about 5-6 different people. So, yeah, really appreciated that on the way home. Thinking, we've got to talk about this tomorrow. So thank you all. Really appreciate all the views and listens. Really, really great. And we will speak to you all again next week. Podful of Saints on Twitter, email below. Come on, you Saints. Let's do something. We'll speak to you again next week. Bye-bye.